Baseball is dead.
Rest in peace.
Vibes are high. They're low in Boston. They're not very good over here in Boston. But the vibes are high because Jackson Holliday made his major league debut last night at Fenway Park. And shame on me for not knowing this.
And contributed.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, he drove in a run on a ground out. But I thought it was really cool that to wear number 7, he asked the Ripken family permission to wear seniors number 7. And Cal and Billy, they kind of talked it over and they were like, I mean, if someone's going to wear it, feel like this is the guy, you know, like when fucking Clint Frazier made his debut for the Yankees and wanted to wear like Mickey Mantle's number, they were like, chill out, guy. But Jackson Holliday being like, hey, I'd love to wear your father's number because it was my father's number. That's pretty cool that the Ripkins were behind it and saw that like this is a legacy player. Especially, you know, with the new ownership in Baltimore, it's like, you know, this could be a guy that plays his whole career here, hopefully, like fucking Cal did.
And Cal is a part of the ownership. And so that helps even more, right? So it's kind of like the owner giving you his number in a way. It's not his, it's his father's, which probably means more to him than his own number. So yeah, here you go, dude. And you know what? Get comfy in it because I don't think you're going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah, that must be a good feeling. What were your guys' impressions of seeing Jackson Holliday last night in his debut?
Fits right in. I mean, the one tough play over the shoulder, that was tough. That's a tough nab. But I think otherwise, from what I was able to capture, because I was watching his game and calling our game. He just looks game ready. He looks game ready.
He looks every bit of 20 years old though.
Oh God, he looks like a baby. He looks like yeah. I mean, he looks like a child for sure, but
he looks like a bat boy standing in the dugout.
It's because he is. He's not a bat boy. He's a batsman. But he's 20 years old, dude. 20 years old.
Yeah. A new 20. Like, what did he turn 20 in December? I think it was. But no, it was a really cool moment to see him out there, and to Kevin Millar went through Sam Kennedy to get Matt Holliday, and it must have been like his brother and sister and his grandfather had the 4 seats by the Orioles dugout. Those are Sam Kennedy's seats. So it was cool to see them all have a front row seat to his debut. Not every family gets to do that. Most families don't get to do that for their child's family member's debut. So no knock. Did get the RBI, and we will be following the Jackson Holliday journey as it goes. But that's not the lead story today. That is not the lead story today. We got a little article here from the New York Times. Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter is said to be negotiating a guilty plea. Ippei Mizuhara stands accused of covering his gambling debts by stealing millions of dollars from Shohei Ohtani's bank account. The federal investigation has determined that Shohei is an innocent bystander in all of this. So if you're one of those people that are saying that Ippei was a fall guy, or that, you know, there's this big scandal, you know, we've gone third party here with the investigation. This isn't a league investigation. Ippei will be going before a federal judge here to determine his guilt in this situation. So that's where we're at on this now.
Well, haven't they discussed? I mean, they figured out that he went in and changed a lot of the details on his bank account information so that he would never be aware. Isn't that what we were talking about? Isn't that what I talked about when we talked about laying out the relationship between an interpreter and an individual like that, and the access that they have?
Well, he changed the notifications on Shohei's account so that Shohei would not receive alerts and confirmations about transactions. And the reported $4.5 million that he was originally accused of stealing from Shohei,
there's more,
it might actually be more than that.
Yeah.
It might actually be more than that.
Now that we basically know, or are very confident, and even more confident now that Ohtani is not directly involved in anything nefarious, my interest in this story dissipates rapidly. But what I do want to say, and this is a little bit soapboxy and it's a little patting ourselves on the back, but I think the way that this podcast handled that story is aging very gracefully. And I know this isn't how the industry works, but if it was, there are a lot of baseball media people who should be apologizing essentially to Shohei Ohtani for the way that they characterize this situation immediately in the vacuum of information that existed right afterwards. So
sure,
that's why these sorts of stories, I think people want immediate reactions. They want like takes, not hot takes necessarily, but they want like a definitive stance on these sorts of things. And I think this is a perfect example of why pumping the brakes and letting the story develop a little bit and not assuming the most nefarious thing was going on is a good idea sometimes.
And well, this I can honestly
this
say,
podcast executed
well,
that.
And Jayhay, I can honestly say, like, I think if we don't have the podcast, I am extremely I would probably be extremely guilty of firing that error, because my initial take, and I explained why, because I have not to the tune of, maybe more than $4.5 million, but I have the same scenario of somebody taking money, very personal. And so my initial take was, fuck Ippei, fuck this dude, and fuck everything that this dude's about. If Ohtani has been this dude that we know him to be, have learned him to be, and this is what you do, I was talking about him taking you all around the globe, and this is what you fucking do. And then from there, you got to start to, okay, well, is there any possibility for things? And you start to weed through it. You start to wait to see what else comes out. And man, I'm just so fucking glad, because I'm like you, Jayhay. It's like, all right, great. Let's turn the page. Let's move on. Let's get this dude's name as far away from shit like this as possible. Like, I don't really care what happens to Ippei, to be honest.
Yeah. I will read every story from here until it is like resolved completely. But my primary interest and concern, as it was for everybody on this podcast, was, is Ohtani involved, and is this going to impact Shohei Ohtani's ability to play baseball and be the best player in my opinion, the best sport in the world? So like, now that seems behind us, I think the baseball community can move on in a sense and just kind of monitor it on the side.
Yeah. Like, to talk about initial takes, like my initial take was, it seems like there's some fuckery involved here, as if to say we don't have all the information, because in the immediate, like, Ippei had already changed his story. So I was like, This is odd. And then someone responded to it and said, well, whose side are you on here? And I said, I'm not on anybody's side. I'm just saying that it's never a good thing when the accused change their story almost instantly. Like that, that's like a dead giveaway.
We basically had to wait for somebody to be in a position to like nail down the fact that Ippei's talking out of both sides of his mouth, right? Like, oh, he's interpreting, but what message is he delivering? And then what is he delivering from that end back to the masses? Like, and that's where that shit, it got caught up. And that's where, like you said, Jared, you start changing your stories real quick, and there's just, but
I guess, like, do we need more clarification in any area here? Like, I think, like, after seeing that Ippei is guilty, in the eyes of the law, the actual feds here.
What's the phrasing? Negotiating a guilty plea?
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of people would be like, oh, well, bro, that doesn't, that could very well mean that, blah, blah. And it's like, you know what?
Yeah, but the feds determined that this is what it was.
And that's exactly what I said is the forensics. The forensics will eventually show you, and that's exactly what happened is they went in and forensically discovered that the guy was making changes to shit and he wasn't telling anybody. And that's what happened.
You can claim that it's a conspiracy theory when Ohtani is saying something and Ippei is saying something. You can say, oh, it's a fall guy situation, class. Even Major League Baseball, if you want the FBI or the IRS, if they have a sense that Shohei Ohtani, a $700 million baseball player and face of the sport, is actually involved in this kind of stuff, you know what that entity is not going to do? Go along with a cover up between 4 people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's not what their business is. So
that's the
highest ranking members of the government don't care about Major League Baseball's PR, or in fact, they probably feel the opposite about it. Most of them towards the antitrust exemption.
Yeah, because it's I remember back in the 90s, you motherfuckers lied to us in Congress.
Yeah,
we're looking to stick it to you guys.
I don't think Major League Baseball is beloved in Washington, but that's a separate thing. Nobody is, or in Langley. I don't think
Langley.
They're not going to go along with a conspiracy theory that Ohtani has pressured Ippei into. So we can fucking throw that shit in the trash and move on.
Yeah, they would be like the fucking DEA agents lined up with their fucking German Shepherds and their Malinois.
They would be presumably very excited.
60 kilos, just taking pictures with all this shit. And they're, man, different.
So the timeline of events, just because it was confusing, I guess, the morning of when they're in Korea and you see Shohei and Ippei in the dugout together smiling and laughing, but it's Shohei is completely unaware that this is going on.
And
Ippei knows that he's about to address the clubhouse at the end of the game to be like, hey, I have a gambling problem. And this is a story's about to come out. And Shohei got visually upset in the clubhouse because I'm assuming that that's the truth. And Shohei finds out in real time with the rest of his team. That's how Shohei finds out that this is going on, was when Ippei addresses the entire clubhouse. He didn't even get a conversation in private. It was just I'm going to address the Dodgers, and Shohei happens to be one of the Dodgers, and you find out as a group. That's crazy.
Even then, it was a matter of he didn't have the whole story because he didn't understand everything, right? He's just kind of trying to piece shit together. And then it wasn't until later where it's finally broken down for him, and he's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Well then. Well, that's going to be a problem.
It makes you feel extra bad for Shohei because I understand that stealing, let's call it $6 million. If it's more than 4.5, let's call it $6 million that he stole. Let's call it $10 million. You steal $10 million from one individual. Most individuals, that's a crippling thing that is potentially life ruining. You steal it from Shohei and it's oh man, that's like stealing 5 cents from most people. It's the reaction is the betrayal. It's I trusted you. You were my best friend for a decade. We did everything together. I shared my life with you. I saw you more than my surprise wife. My bond with you is closer than anybody, including my family. And you did this to me. So I think that's where I kind of feel extra bad for Shohei because his reaction is about the betrayal. It's not about the money.
The one thing that will always because then you think you know what? There's a solid chance. And as we're finding out, that wasn't the first time that happened. This is just the first time it's been caught. It's the first time it's been notified. And that's a feeling, whether you ever have that confirmation or not, that's a feeling I can imagine. I know that just sticks with you. You bury it, you put it away and but you just, when you're damn, man, that's what that means. At what point in time did the relationship become disposable?
Yeah.
Because for Shohei, he's riding with his guy, right? And it just wasn't the same on the other end. And we're talking about a dude who bought his teammate's wife a fucking 6-figure vehicle
before even meeting the guy.
Before even met him for the jersey. Hey, right? Just pure class. Pure class.
Yeah,
everything
most dudes will get a Rolex or something like that.
No.
And Joe Kelly's wife driving around. What was it? Was it? It was a Porsche. Yeah.
Yeah, she got a fucking sick Porsche.
Yeah, must be nice. Shout out to Ashley Kelly. Great family. But yeah, for now, I kind of echo Jayhay's sentiment where it's like the story is what it is. It's now pivoted away from this mass conspiracy implicating Shohei in any degree. He I don't want to, that's not the right word. I was going to say he skates. He doesn't skate. He just didn't do anything. He's an innocent man in all this.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. So we'll I guess have updates as it pertains to Ippei, just because the connection to Shohei makes it baseball news in some way. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not a baseball story anymore. It's an Ippei story. It's a translator story. It's not connected to Shohei now.
Yeah.
This is some shit news. White Sox third baseman Yoán Moncada. He's in the final year of his 5-year, $70 million contract with the Chicago White Sox. He is out until at least the All-Star break, and potentially could be out for the entire season with a left adductor strain. I believe, Dallas, the adductor is the groin. Yeah.
Yeah, like your hip flexor area. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where it's at, but yes, he, yeah, that's terrible. Cause it looked painful, man. Like he was not in a good place. That's terrible. That's terrible news. Cause how old is Moncada?
Yoan Moncada is 28 years old. He'll be 29 in May.
So think about having maybe, not fully healthy until age 30. I mean, I feel like there's still meat on the bone.
Yeah, I mean, it always sucks. Like we just talked about this with Shane Bieber. Like when you barely play in your walk year, and then you're out for the year with an injury for your entire walk year. I think Shane Bieber is probably in a better spot. Former Cy Young, looked great in the 2 starts that he did make this year. Whereas Yoán Moncada, this is a dude that in 2019 played in 132 games, had a .915 OPS. But in his 403 games since then, we're talking 2020 until this year, 244 with a 722 OPS. So, I mean, I don't know that the being out for your entire walk year with that body of work being the 5 seasons bulk going into your free agency bodes well for his free agent odds, especially when we saw an elite defender like Matt Chapman had to fucking dance for his meal all offseason long. Now Moncada, with that body of work, has to go into the offseason looking for a contract as well.
So, I mean, Jayhay, if you got stuff to talk about, like him specifically as a player, what I wanted to talk about is, and it's unfortunate because I hate viewing guys in this light, but we talk about the industry being able to sort of control and manipulate earnings and being able to almost eradicate certain types of players from the game so that the ability to manipulate the dollars is there. And like everything that we just laid out about Moncada and the work he's done over the course of this 5-year 70 piece, what could you possibly expect because of what we have seen from guys who were healthy and who were active in playing, who might have a little bit better track record? What could you expect? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Is a 2-year deal? Really, it's a 1 with an option, heavily incentive based with a lot of escalators that kick in. Like, is that the kind of deal that we're looking at? And
he's probably looking at a 1-year deal. And like, maybe it's with the White Sox too, because it's like, we know him. It's a known commodity. We're not going anywhere. Maybe he's comfortable here. Maybe he likes it here. Cause I don't think if he's going to be entering his age 30 season, I don't think we're at the point of like minor league offers, but it's probably like what Tim Anderson just went through.
Well, the market hasn't evaporated faster for any class of player than what Moncada is now, which is like basically the mid to
middle class,
suppose it, like, yeah, the 1 win player, the 1 win position player, basically. that there used to be a value attached to that person, the 1 to 2 win guy, and it's just not really there anymore. And to be fair, like I love being pro player when the opportunity arises, but to your point, Jared, like we are going on 1,700 plate appearances of Yoán Moncada just being a guy. Mm-hmm. And like, I know the 2019 season was exciting, and I know like there's been reports that, you know, he battled, I believe battled COVID in a way that like kind of derailed him health-wise for a longer period of time than it impacted other players in a lot of cases. And that's super unfortunate for him. But like, we're like, just let me just read something for a second. This is since 2020, just since 22. Okay. Strained right oblique, strained right hamstring, strained left hamstring, lower back soreness, lower back inflammation, left abductor strain. That's all of those required DL stints. Okay. So that's just a lot of wear and tear. And he wasn't particularly healthy in the time period prior to when I started reading either. So this is a guy who is not a difference maker, going to miss the rest of this season, has a long checkered health and injury history, and missing time. And I think you guys are right. It's a 1-year deal. And I don't think he's walking into camp next season as the presumed starter on that 1-year deal necessarily either, unless it's for a second division type of unit like that. And that's not seriously competitive for the 2025 season. Like, I think that's what we're looking at for Yoán Moncada moving forward.
Yeah. Which is a crazy downfall when you consider that he was the primary piece of that Chris Sale trade in 2017. It was him and Michael Kopech. And
looked like a win-win.
Yeah, it did. And you could even call it a win-win still, because he ended up being their starting third baseman for half a decade. It's not like he completely floundered at the point of this guy's a complete bust. Like, he was a serviceable player, but this is also a player that I remember when the Red Sox signed him as an international free agent, that I can go back, because I remember
huge hype.
Yeah, I remember stuff more when I used to write versus just like strictly podcast. But I remember writing about him at the time of the signing, where scouts were saying this is the closest thing that we've seen to Mike Trout since Mike Trout. And that was obviously, he was the number one prospect in baseball at the time.
Well, and not to, I know this is about Moncada, but you know, the lack of development from Moncada and Kopech, and I know they're both solid enough big leaguers, and there's a lot of obviously merit and credit to that, but neither one of those people is developing into a star, a cornerstone level player. Moncada is now essentially done with the White Sox, presumably, and Kopech is a relief pitcher. It's a tough turn of events, and a big reason why we're looking at the White Sox being in the situation that they're in.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and there's no point in talking about what this means for the White Sox, because they were never going to be a competent baseball team here.
No, they're going to be terrible and are terrible.
Yeah.
And maybe terrible for a really, really long time, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. But some positive news. I feel like a lot of downers to start this episode. But our guy, the king of the guest hill, Christian Yelich, who hasn't been on the podcast in a few years now. Did we get him on? No, I saw like he was in Boston, I think, in 2022, but I don't think we did an interview. It's been a while since Christian Yelich has been on the podcast. But Jayhay made this point before we came on the air, because I was talking about this being the year, like, is Christian Yelich back? But last year, super underrated season for Yelly. Hit 278, but 370 on base. Slugged 447, which was his highest mark since the COVID year. 818 OPS. And he played 144 games. But this year, through 10 games, still remains to be seen. But he's leading the National League in homers, just hit his 5th home run. He loves hitting in Cincinnati. That's where I think, did he have both of his cycles in Cincinnati? I can't remember. I know he had one of them. I don't pay any
attention to the cycle, so I don't know.
Yeah. I think he might have been both of them. but he's got 5 homers. He's driven in 11. He's leading the league in slugging, 737. He's got an 1146 OPS, and he's hitting 316. Shout out to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Christian Yelich. Is he back, Jayhay? Because I know that you dove into the numbers. I hope you're not about to break my heart. I hope you're about to tell me some stuff that's going to reinforce my belief that he's back.
I'm way more optimistic about this one than what we talked about with Rodon.
Okay.
There's some cool stuff going here. Obviously, since he was good last year, as you alluded to, that's bullet point number 1. Couple of nuggets here. You guys can do with this what you will. He already has more homers off of breaking balls than he did all of last season. He has 3 this year, and he had 2 all of last season. His launch angle was between 2.8 degrees and 3.6 degrees every season from 21 to 23. It's 11.9 degrees this season. So that is obviously, we'll see whether it's a permanent change. It has at least been a temporary change. That follows with his ground ball percentage declining 14% from 57 to 43, and his fly ball gaining all of that from 17 to 30%. One final note, he's also being very aggressive in the zone. Swing rate in the zone is 68%. Was 68% last year, is 74% this year. So, the 5
average EV. You got an average EV for me?
Do I have an average EV for you? I do, Dallas. It is 90.0, which is actually down 1.7 miles per hour from last season. That's probably, something of a more fly ball thing, isn't it, though? Because
because if you've got a higher ground ball rate, your exit velocity is just greater. Those hard ground balls come off the bat hot as opposed to those cheap fly balls. So that could be something that's negligible in my opinion, but that's why I was curious, just because of the reduction in ground balls. Wanted to see what the average exit velocity was. But yeah, because it's so minimal, like I said, it's negligible. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the difference between peak Yelich, and the guy who probably should have won consecutive MVPs and did capture 1, and the guy who has been a good but not great player in the season since, has been power output. And that was the difference between pre-breakout Yelich, when he was primarily with the Marlins, and when he started being an MVP caliber player with the Brewers. It's not like Yelich went from being a shitty player to an MVP. He went from being a ground ball heavy, contact oriented player who didn't hit for much power and then started hitting for power. So like the 5 homers are great. He's elevating the ball more. Is he going to win the MVP? I don't know. I maybe I'll pop that bubble, but I think there's reasons to be cautiously optimistic through 12 or 13 games or whatever it's been.
Yeah, and to your point about the power, let's remember that those 2 years, the back-to-back MVP candidacies, he went from a 20 homer guy to basically a 40 homer guy. He damn near doubled his power output in that department 2 years in a row, and then dealing with some of the ticky-tack injury stuff that he's dealt with. I think you do see that power decline. So I'm hopeful that there's more of him getting back to that 20, 25, maybe knocking on the door at 30. That'd be great. That would be great.
It's just hard not to look at his batted ball profile so far, his ground balls and fly balls, and then look at what he did in 2019, which was his last great season, and see that they are basically identical. And that's a formula for Christian Yelich that changes who he is as a player. And we'll see if he can keep it up.
I would love that. That would make me very excited. That would make me very excited. Speaking of Jayhay's nugs, he has a nug tangent that he's about to go off on. But before we get there, is kind of a light, I guess, news slate.
Got to shout out the Naylor brothers, don't we? On fucking National Sibling Day, these dudes in the big leagues on the same team in the same lineup hit a bomb in the same damn inning.
Whenever I try and find, or whenever I go start digging for nugs, when I see something that's happened, I typically try to check Lang's page, Sarah Lang, shout out, just to make sure she didn't do it already. And and she was all over the Naylor situation yesterday. And what struck me was, I believe I counted this correctly, that there have been 10 instances, according to Elias, of brothers homering in the same inning in baseball history.
10?
Yeah.
Isn't that bananas to
Doesn't
think about?
that seem very high?
Yes.
It seems very high, number one. And number two, how do you put a filter on that? Like, how do you filter?
You
like, is there a
you
brother
can't
filter?
do that search.
No, you got to call
That's
Elias.
why she had to contact Elias.
Yeah.
So you have to have
How do they do
hook
it?
up. They have all of, I mean, that's why they're the official statistician of Major League Baseball. They have all the historical stuff. So the fun searches that we like to run or whatever, they can do all of that. It's just with all the data ever historically.
Where the fuck do they get it from? How do they just like have it and no one else does? I want to know.
Probably in agreement with Retro Sheet.
Who is Elias? I want to know. I want to know, like, can we get, because there's no names attached to these people. Like I want someone from the Elias Sports Bureau to come on here and talk dirty to us.
It's Larry in Ahwatukee, Arizona at the Quick and Go. They just got him in a fucking closet back there.
Yeah, they've got their own Jayhay. I want to meet
Larry
this guy. Like,
Elias.
why doesn't this?
Hold on.
You've met them?
Tangent time. I've met some of these people.
Oh,
So back in the day on Baseball Tonight, when, the show had an investment and was operating 7 days a week and people cared, the agreement with the research department and ESPN and the Elias Sports Bureau was that for days where we had like 2 or 3 shows, they would send an Elias Sports Bureau stats representative to Bristol from New York, and they would stay there in a hotel for like 2, 3, 4 days or whatever. And they would come in for their shift and participate in the Baseball Tonight, like, production lead up to the show and help with stats questions that, as I just alluded to, were unanswerable by anybody that isn't employed by Elias.
Were they there with us, Jay, together?
There would be. I don't remember whether it stopped by the time we were working together or not, but it was definitely happening in like 10, 11, 12, 13, like when I first started working.
Because I got there
in
in 14.
And yeah, so it may have stopped by then. But like they used to come up and they would sit basically right next to me or near me or whatever. And like something would happen and I'd be like, hey, I can't get this on Baseball Reference. I can't get this on, whatever. Is this something that you can pursue? And then they would have to run like programs. And like, it would be a couple of minutes sometimes before these things would pop out or whatever. And then you would get your answer. And the agreement is that we were supposed to credit Elias, graphically or verbally, depending on what the situation was. So shout out Frank LaBombarda.
Shout out Frank.
That's one guy who was a more frequent visitor. Kevin Hines, a couple of dudes I remember working with, but they are great stats people, and obviously have incredible access. So it's a really wonderful combination. So Frank or Kevin or anybody else with Elias, if you listen to the Baseball is Dead podcast, hit me up or hit up Mark Simon, who can hit me up, and then we'll get you on here and we can do an interview with the Elias Sports Bureau.
I would love that.
And then reach an agreement with Elias and Baseball is Dead for exclusive access, like MLB employees.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more just curious, like, what do they use? They must use everything. Like, I'm sure they have their own database, but they probably
it's their own
use,
shit.
So they have like, they don't use like Play Index. They don't use like anything.
No.
No. It's that underground.
Yeah. They have their own.
Stats.
They have their own
because
they have like the bat phone of stats.
Baseball Reference is obviously tremendous, and I use their site daily, hourly, whatever. But like the Elias Sports Bureau has the agreement with Major League Baseball that they are the official statisticians of Major League Baseball. So like if it is a dispute between Elias and Baseball Reference, like in terms of leaderboards or search engines or whatever, like ultimately, as far as baseball is concerned, the correct answer is with Elias.
Yeah.
Until proven otherwise, or until Elias adjusts their answer, basically. Like that, the most notable example of that is the all-time hits leaderboard, and RBI, 2 of them, which are constant thorns for. I remember when I was working at MLB and ESPN, where like newer people who didn't like know this would pull up the leaderboard on reference, and it's technically incorrect, I believe, because the number of hits that Cap Anson is credited with, like pre 1900 or something, is disputed or not fully whatever. But like when Jeter was climbing, or when maybe somebody else was climbing, it was something that was like a constant issue. Or when Pujols was climbing the RBI list
during the captain's
so yeah,
log?
that's talking Elias.
Yeah, I'm not. So I mean, obviously, we all use Baseball Reference. I love Baseball Reference, but I remember being introduced to Baseball Reference for the first time. I believe it was 2008. The website looks exactly the same today,
basically,
as it did in 2008, and the functionality is exactly the same. Like, think about it's not
user friendly.
Think about
first time I used that shit, Jared, was 2014 when I showed up at ESPN. I was like, oh, this is sweet.
Right. But like, think about like the advancement of technology since 2008. Like back in 2008, if you wanted to talk on the phone and you wanted to play music, like those were separate devices. If you wanted to watch TV, that was a third device. Now we could do that all in one device, which is great. Technology advancement has been fantastic since 2008. But as a baseball fan, and I'm sure that everyone listening to this podcast can relate to this, how do we not have up to the second updated statistics? Like, if you want to just depend on Baseball Reference or Fangraphs for that matter, for your baseball data, sortable baseball data, you've got to wait until like 10 o'clock the next morning. Sometimes it's even later for like the stats to update. Like, I want to know, like when you're looking at MLB.com and you've got a guy that goes, has a hit in his first 2 at bats. It's like, well, now he's up to 400. And then he goes 0 for 3 the rest of the way. It's like, well, now he's hitting 386. Like, it's up to the second updated. That's what I need. And I thought in 2008, I was like, all right, we're going to have this at some point. No, it's 2024, and I'm still waiting for my up to the second statistics.
That's like a living organism somewhere. That thing has a heartbeat. Whatever is pumping out those up-to-date statistics on the reg like that for our sport, like there's somebody working a shift round the clock. Like there is no stopping that. Like that keyboard is getting replaced every month because it's just, I mean, you'd start an unsafe work environment. Fires from that keyboard. That's how quick.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in all of it. And I'm sure, again, if you're listening to a baseball podcast 3 times a week, you're someone that frequents these websites and you look at the statistics of your favorite players. And sometimes, like, you know, it's almost like when you go to Target to maybe get a bathroom rug, but you leave there with a coffee maker, you know, like you go there and you don't know what you came for, but you never know what you're going to walk out with. That's how I feel about Baseball Reference and Fangraphs. It's like, all right, yeah, like I came there to look at Christian Yelich's stats, but I didn't realize I was going to leave by looking at Mickey Mantle's career numbers and comparing them to Lou Gehrig's. You know, like that's just like baseball stats websites for me, and why I enjoy them so much. So yeah, I would love to have someone from Elias come on here and just go full stat geek on us. Like that would be a treat.
You know what we should do? We should have it set up so they're behind a screen, just a silhouette.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and we've got like they're hooked up, they're ready to go. We can just pump questions at them for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Like, I agree. I don't want to know what they look like. I want them to remain anonymous. It's like Area 51. It's like someone just talking about the government secrets, but we can't know their identity. I would love that.
Yeah, I'm all in.
I can effort this. I can try. See if we can track down an old contact.
It would be very funny too if we could have in post-production, if Jake can modulate their voice.
Yeah. Ricky Mantle. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be a very interesting topic. I think people are kind of looking for more outside the box content. Like there's a Reddit thread on the Baseball is Dead Reddit page, like people like saying like, why Jared doesn't have a family, why doesn't he do more? And I'm like, buddy, like baseball is dead 3 times a week, Section 10 twice a week, baseball hour once a week, fucking MLB Network, and I'll be doing some NESN stuff. I'm putting out a lot of baseball content into the world, but that's not to say I appreciate the challenge. That's not to say I'm not willing to do more. I'm willing to do more. We will be doing more. To tease, I just got a peek at Jayhay's script for his first video essay video that will be going up on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. If you prefer to listen to the podcast, that's fine. But we will be cranking out a ton of additional content that is separate from the podcast, but kind of ties back into the podcast. Dallas has a couple of different ideas up his sleeve for the YouTube channel. I'll be doing some stuff. I mean, don't sleep on that Jake content either. Like he put out, he'll drop a video once a year, but it's a fucking banger. How many videos does the Dennis Drinkwater video have?
You count like all platforms, it's up near 6 mil.
6 mil.
Yeah, that was fucking beautiful, Jake.
Yeah,
beautiful. That guy. I mean, that guy he's all about priority. That's a guy that I know I could hang out with.
Quality, not quantity for Jake.
Fucking beautiful.
I got a few more in the works.
There you go. Yeah. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. Me personally, as a consumer, I love watching podcasts. I can't really sit down and listen to them because I'll get distracted and like start reading Twitter and I'm not hearing what I'm listening to. But if I sit down on the couch, like I'll put a podcast on YouTube or whatever, and I'll sit there and watch it. But we will have content separate from the podcast on the YouTube channel. So check that out. It'll be dropping soon. Do you have a rough estimate? I mean, it's more of a, I guess, maybe even a Jake question, but do we have like an ETA on the first video essay, Jayhay?
Well, my plan was to take your very helpful feedback into consideration today, and get Jake and Jeremy a new script, and then
we're doing full. We're not ripping it up, are we?
No.
Okay,
no, not like from scratch.
Second draft.
Just
second draft.
Yeah, yes, much more accurate way.
Okay.
And then from there, I would say, with due respect, I don't know how long it's going to take Jake and Jeremy to move on it from there, but I am confident that the end product will be high class.
Like that a lot. Dallas, I was watching a clip from Foul Territory this morning. Ken Rosenthal was on, and he said that can we even call them the Oakland A's? The A's. They're just, when they move to Sacramento, they're not going to be the Sacramento A's. They're just the A's. They're not affiliated with any city. But Rosenthal was saying that when they move to Sacramento, the team plans to spend more on the roster, and then when they move to Vegas, they plan on being like, not obviously like a top 5 payroll, but like top 10, top 15. Is that eyewash? What are you hearing on the A's intentions to spend once they actually relocate twice?
Like stuff like that, and that is just so far down the road. Yeah, so you're excited about the possibilities that an expanded payroll brings, but you also are aware that there are hurdles in place that may, whether you like it or not, prevent you from spending that kind of money, just because players might look at what the next few years look like and might decide that that's not how they want to spend those 3 years of their career, wherever they may be, particularly in their career. So, I mean, those are just a few hurdles that I know the front office is already aware of. I think any front office, any baseball ops department knows the inherent challenges that come along with these things. And that's, I mean, for better or worse, I think that's something that the front office has done a great job of, is operating in the lane that they've been in for as long as they've been in it. So all that to say that, understanding the circumstances, yeah, it sounds great. I mean, there's a lot of folks who don't really want to hear that, though. And I think just at the end of the day, it will remain to be seen. And it is something I think that a lot of people are interested in watching unfold, for reasons I just outlined with the ballpark situation and kind of understanding how free agency goes. Breaking news.
OJ Simpson died. 76. It's breaking news. It's breaking news.
All right. Well,
Kansas City Royals have won 6 straight games. Oh, shit. You know what the most impressive part about this 6-game winning streak is, Dallas?
What? They've been buffaloing folks? What?
Bobby Witt Jr. over the life of the 6-game winning streak. He's hitting .217 with a .628 OPS. He's only scored 3 runs.
Other people are doing it too?
Everyone's doing it. Some have even called, besides the Dodgers, some people have called the Kansas City Royals the winner of the offseason. I don't want to say it's hard to argue, but they're definitely in the conversation for it. And if Royals fans are like, what the fuck do we have to do to get a mention on this podcast? Well, winning 6 games in a row, starting out the season 8-4, being a game back of first place with a plus 29 run differential, that'll do it. They have a better run differential than any team in the vaunted American League East. They have a better run differential. It's basically everyone except for the guards. They have a better run differential than the Braves, than the Dodgers. How about some love for them Kansas City Royals, Jayhay? What do you got on the Royals?
2 player notes here. Vinny P dropped a career high 5 RBI last night in the win. It had been it'd been a very slow start to the season for Vinny P. So that was good to see. And then to my great surprise, as I was poking around for Nuggets today, do you know who leads Major League Baseball among pitchers in win probability added?
Is it Tyler Glasnow?
It's Seth Lugo.
Oh,
of the Kansas City Royals.
Wow. And people yelled at me for overreacting when the Red Sox didn't sign Seth Lugo. I've wanted Seth Lugo for like 2.5 years.
And Michael Wacha fucking shoved the last time he was out too, by the way. So 2 low cost and so far very effective signings for the Royals rotation, which was desperately in need of their presence and their performance so far.
Dallas, any thoughts on the Kansas City Royals?
Well, no, just your initial note that it's not just Bobby Witt Jr., but that was why I was so excited about what he represents as a player. Is he's the dude who makes guys around him better. He's the dude that allows the focus to be on him and other folks are able to flourish. Like when he's the dude that you don't want to beat you and you got to pick on other people and those other people punch back, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You put multiple ball games together. You win series. You win streaks.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get into Jayhay's Nugs?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Jayhay, the floor is yours.
Okay. Excited about this brand new segment.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to do a 7-pack of nugs.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. Number 7. I'm going to get into this in more detail on Twitter afterwards, and we can talk about it if you guys want after the nug-pack. But Kyle Hendricks, he might be done. It might be glue factory time for old Kyle Hendricks. One note that jumped out to me, his sinker, which has obviously been a huge pitch for Kyle over the years. Batters are hitting, after his start last night, which was another disaster, batters are hitting .516 off of his sinker, which is 16 for 31. Now, that's obviously bad. How bad is it? The 16 hits allowed are the most hits that any pitcher has allowed off of any single pitch in baseball this season. There are lots of other reasons to be extremely concerned about Kyle Hendricks, but that is one of the most extreme. That was number 7. Number 6. This is pretty trivial, but we're trying to have some fun here too. Fastest and slowest home run trots so far here in the 2024 season. We've got some competition from the league leaders in it last season. The fastest home run trots this year, last year it was Steven Kwan, and the slowest was Randy Arozarena. And if they want to keep those crowns, they better look out, because the slowest this year, Alex Verdugo. He took, you see how long he took on that home run?
What was it, like 28 seconds?
It was 29.3 seconds. Vlad Jr. is also ahead of Arozarena, who's currently in third, rock steady as a home run trotter. And 3 people are ahead of Steven Kwan, including Red Sox legend David Hamilton.
Yeah.
Evan Carter and Ezekiel Duran. I'm sorry, Jarren Duran. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting. Jarren Duran are ahead of Steven Kwan. So time to pick up the pace. Number 5. We alluded to this when we were talking about the Royals. The Guardians and Royals run differentials combined are plus 64. The rest of the AL, negative 52.
Wow. Who's dragging us down?
That's gross.
What team is that bad?
The whole AL West outside of the Texas Rangers is negative.
Yeah, I see that now. Wow, that's very surprising for the Mariners. Mariners are negative 21.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some bad, there's some weird run differential stuff going on. But yeah, obviously Guardians and Royals, class of the AL, just as we drew up. Number 4. Listen, I got to take an L in the middle of this nug-pack, because when the Cubs didn't re-sign Kris Bryant and Javier Baez and basically kicked them out the door, I was very critical of the Cubs in that sense and called them cheap and said, you're dismantling a championship core. Maybe they won't be as great as they were, but they're still really, really good baseball players and deserve to be around. They don't, actually. They don't deserve to be around. And I'm not the first person to combine Javier Baez's and Kris Bryant's stats, but I don't remember them ever being this bad. So far this season, these two guys have combined to hit 123, which is 9 for 73, with 26 strikeouts, 1 single homer, a 164 slugging percentage, and have been worth negative 0.6 WAR regardless of which WAR you use. Among Major League Baseball players, they rank in win probability added position players. There have been 197 qualified batters so far this year. They rank 197th, so dead last for Kris Bryant, and 182nd for Javier Baez. And it is just shocking every single time I look how bad those two are and how very, very great they used to be.
Can we get an AAV for both those guys? Because all that production is going to cost you roughly what to have them on your team together?
Prior to actually looking, I'm going to say that the two of them are
50?
making a combined $50 million this season. That's
what I had in my head.
So let's see.
It might be higher than that.
Javier Baez is at 25, so we're off to a good start. Kris Bryant. Let's see. Kris Bryant is making 27, so $52 million.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to disappoint.
Thank you.
So that'll cost you $52 million.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I did feel bad for Kris Bryant though when he was talking about his struggles.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was a tough clip because you can tell he's like smiling through the pain. Like that's a broken man right there. When you're that down and you're talking about how awful things are, but you're smiling, that's the sign of a broken man for sure. Whereas like Javi's just like, man, I'm paid. I chose to play in Detroit of all places. So like I got what I asked for in this situation. What is I know that we're kind of like putting you on the spot here. What is Javi Baez's chase rate compared to the league average? Can you find his chase rate for his time as a Tiger? What's his chase rate for his time during a Tiger compared to the league average? I would love to know that statistic. See, if only we had fucking Frank or Kevin, they would know that off the top of their head.
All right, so just I can search and find your specific question, but this is eye-popping enough potentially. The MLB average for chase rate is 28.5%. Baez's career average is 43.6%. And this season, he is at 55.1%, which is up from 44% just last season and would be both a career high and the first time he's ever exceeded a 50% chase rate. I'm going to go ahead and take a stab and say that it might be the first time. Maybe he'll keep it up, maybe he won't. I bet there is not a qualified season on record with a chase rate above 50%.
Probably
would
not.
Be my guess.
Maybe Vladdy, but he made contact, so it wouldn't be a chase. It would be contact.
Javi Baez does not have enough plate appearances to qualify. The current league leader in that regard is Sal Perez at 50.5% in chase rate. So if you lower it to 25 plate appearances, Javi Baez is 1 at 55.1 and Sal Perez is 2 at 50.5. So he's in his own class of chase right now, which is, in some ways it's kind of admirable to see a guy as he's kind of spiraling down, kind of the baseball toilet in a way, to just keep doing what he does at an even more extreme level. He's like, I'm not going to change one thing about how I play baseball. In fact, I'm going to lean further into the most extreme elements of my game. I'm going to swing at everything out of the zone. I'm going to strike out, and I'm never, ever, ever going to walk again. He has 0 walks this season.
I mean, like, I heard AJ Hinch kind of talk about this a little bit in the offseason about Javi and how he went to Puerto Rico to talk to him and figure out how does this guy's brain work. Surely they had conversations about changing the way that he does things because they're not working. And it would sound like to me that what you're saying is true. He took everything about his game that was clearly not working and doubled and tripled down on it and said, you know what? I'm going to lean even heavier into all the things that I was doing before that were not working.
And I got to tell you, his last walk was September 18th. We are getting to a point where his performance is also, like both of these guys, to be honest, their performance is so bad that I don't know how aggressive teams are going to be about eating some of this money that are owed to guys who are just true flotsam at this point. But Chris Bryant has 4 full seasons after this season still left on the deal. Let me pull up.
Chris Bryant feels salvageable. He wasn't awful. His problem before this year was injuries. But you have to figure a guy that has some pop can get it going in Colorado of all places. Javi Baez is a corpse.
I agree. If I had to try to salvage one of these people for the life of the contract, I would also choose Chris Bryant. Javi Baez has 3 full seasons after this one upcoming. So he was barely playable last year and has been appreciably worse in a small sample size this year. I just don't know whether or not you have $73 million coming to a guy, which is what he's owed after this season. And maybe it's actually more relevant as a Baez question than it is as a Bryant question, because the Rockies are a total dumpster fire and have no immediate future. The Tigers are coming in it to a degree and are probably coming sooner than later with the AL Central being the way that it is. So can you afford to just, and maybe they're, not to cut myself off, maybe they're starting to answer this question in a way by the fact that Javier Baez is not getting out there every day, right? And that his plate appearances are already being eaten into, given the fact that he is not qualified in the leaderboards and stuff like that. So maybe that question's coming sooner than later, but it's just they both look hopeless currently, even if we both retain a little bit more hope for Bryant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So that was number 4. Bonus nug there. Juan Soto, number 1 in win probability added among position players. So nice start to his walk year and his Yankees tenure. Nug number 3, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who remains appointment viewing for me, is scheduled to pitch tomorrow evening. One thing I'm watching for, his curveball usage has increased with each start. It went from 23% in that disaster first outing to 27% in his second to 35% last outing. And over the last 2 starts, batters are 0 for 11 with 6 strikeouts against the curveball. So interested to see whether that usage and effectiveness continues. Nug number 2. Yeah, what's up?
Question. Do you have the 4-seam fastball usage and the numbers against it? Because I know that was kind of something that people were, I don't want to say concerned, but curious to see how the big league hitters were going to do against his 4-seam.
Yeah, so far this season, I know it has been comparatively hittable. Batters are hitting 278 off the 4-seamer. He's allowed more hits off the 4-seamer, 5, than he's allowed off of all of his other pitches combined, which is 4. But he hasn't allowed a homer off of the pitch. They're only slugging 4
damage.
Yeah, 444 slug, 502 expected slugging percentage. So certainly room for improvement there, but it's not like it's getting tattooed right off the bat.
Yeah. It's fair.
Although the exit velocity is a little high off of it. Guess that's something to watch. Rapid fire here for number 2. Toronto is the only team in Major League Baseball yet to hit a homer with a runner in scoring position.
Oh. Huh.
So not sure what that means, other than they should probably hit a home run now or then with a runner in scoring position. Yep. And then Nug number 1, ending the Nug pack, Elly De La Cruz. Obviously was a hot topic of offseason conversation, given how he started last season, how he finished ice cold. What sort of player would he be? Obviously, still a lot of swing and miss going on in his game, but he's got 3 homers and 6 stolen bases through 12 games, which brings his career 162 game average to a prorated 24 homers and 60 stolen bases over 162 games. So that made me curious if over a full season he's on pace for 24 homers and 60 stolen bases. That's between this year and last year. How many times has that happened in Major League Baseball history? And the answer is 7. There have been 7 seasons in Major League Baseball history where a batter has hit 20 homers and stolen 60 bags. However, it has only been done by 4 people. Ronald Acuna Jr. last year, as we all remember very well. 3 different seasons by Ricky Henderson, 1985, 1986, and 1990. 1 season by Eric Davis, 1986, and then 2 seasons by Joe Morgan, 1973 and 1976. So Elly De La Cruz is obviously still a work in progress, but there's just so much to be excited about here. And I feel like in some ways, given the hype that he arrived with and persisted with for a while last year, the baseball world has almost not talked enough about Elly this year, that it's almost like we've almost gotten to assumed territory with him, in lightning fast speed. So I wanted to call some attention to him, and obviously keep track of what he's on pace for this season and over the course of his career. So that's the debut of the Nug Pack.
Wow, love that. Dallas has to go. We can say bye to Dallas because I want to continue the conversation on Elly De La Cruz quickly. Dallas, do you have any final thoughts?
Nope. Later.
Bye.
Good job.
With Elly De La Cruz, I mean, you're obviously pretty in tune with the rest of the league, as most people are that listen to this podcast. Did you get the impression that fans, because he came up so red hot, and I don't want to say he got shoved down fans' throats because it was wanted. We were we're excited about this guy. We've heard about this guy. He's great. But then he struggled a little bit to kind of continue that. So I feel like it went from we love Elly to what a fraud very quickly. Mm-hmm. So now that he's kind of doing it again, performing at a high level, is it just the people that wanted to say he was a fraud are afraid to take that back? Because to your point about like we're not talking about Elly enough, I feel like that's kind of what happened last year was he's the greatest thing ever. And then, oh man, like he didn't sustain hitting fucking 350 with a 1200 OPS. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to still have like some general reservation about what he is and what this season is going to look like.
Yeah.
There are, for as like, as sexy as the home runs and the stolen bases and the, if you look at just this season, his pace, quote unquote, is even more impressive, counting numbers wise. And obviously his triple slash line currently is very cool too. He's got a 1.034 OPS. So, but there's still some stuff here that's like, okay, let's look under the hood a little bit. He's at a 35.4% strikeout rate, which is at or near the top of the league, and it's also higher than it was last year. His walk rate is currently lower than it was last year. His in-zone contact rate is lower than it was last year. There is his overall whiff rate. So, strikeouts are one thing, whiff rate's another, interconnected, obviously, but that's also up appreciably from last year. So there's a lot of success being had when bat hits ball, but for people to still want to pump the brakes a little bit on, is this guy, ascending into an MVP candidate, which his triple slash might suggest, I'm fine pumping the brakes there. But I continue to be extremely excited about him. I think we're still going to encounter, some pretty extreme lows still with his slumps. I think that's still coming, but why not enjoy a very exciting player while he's playing very well instead of, lamenting that he's going to be bad for a stretch eventually coming around the corner. Like I'm just cool like watching him.
Yeah.
And when he's bad, I won't watch him as much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because that's where I was at last year so I have the numbers right here. His first, and I didn't realize that the backside was as large of a sample size as it was. I thought it was smaller. I didn't realize he was up for as long as he was. His first 15 games, 361 of 418 on base, and he slugged 656 for a 1074 OPS. His next 83 games, he hit 211 with a 279 on base, a 364 slug for a 643 OPS. So the fall off was demonstrative. Like I feel like, when he first came up, 15 games, dude's hitting 361 with a 1074 OPS. Like, of course I'm going to be talking about him left and right on Twitter. Like I'm excited watching him. Like Reds fans were rejuvenated. Like that's an awesome baseball town that has gone through some hardships with their ownership, basically saying like, we're getting rid of the expensive players and we're not investing in the team, but like happy opening day, like take it or leave it. Like shut up. That was basically what was said was if you don't like it, then go root for another team. And he was like, we know you're not going anywhere. So it's like, we're not investing in the team, but we know you're going to deal with it. So just shut up. So to have that sort of treatment from your ownership to then having Ellie De La Cruz get called up in June, do what he did in those first 15 games, and then the next 83 kind of fall in the shitter. It was a little disheartening to see fans outside of Cincinnati. These weren't necessarily Reds fans, like fans outside of Cincinnati kind of turn on Elly and be like, see, I told you he wasn't as good as you thought he was going to be. It's like, well, no one thought he was going to hit fucking 360 with an OPS over 1,000. He's a rookie, but like he can still be a super exciting player, and he is.
The same people who make the complaint that a player is being shoved down their throats or being oversaturated by Major League Baseball social media accounts or whatever will be the exact same people to turn around and tell you that Major League Baseball doesn't market their stars enough. They will literally be the exact same people. So I am not interested in the line of thinking that Elly De La Cruz was shoved down the baseball public's throat. He is exactly, when he's going, he is exactly he's like the perfect baseball player from a viewing aesthetics perspective. He is big. He is super athletic. He's very fast. He hits lots of home runs. He runs in a way where his speed is like it's evident. It's fun to watch.
Long strides.
Yeah, which is not the case for every single fast player in baseball history.
Mm-hmm.
And he hits the ball exceptionally hard when he makes contact. So I lose me with that bullshit. You know what? When he's not playing well, he'll be marketed and promoted less often. That's generally how that works. When guys hit homers and steal bags and hit triples and shit, those are the highlights. That's what we want. But you know, while you were talking, I was also kind of poking around, and you know, another reason to be a little skeptical. Basically, all of his damage is coming against fastballs so far this season. 100% of his home runs and the vast majority of his hits. And if you look at his whiff rate against non-fastballs, it was 35% last year, and it's approaching 50% this year. So there's some good fortune going on for his triple slash and his overall production, but that's okay. It's still fun to watch, even if it's a little unsustainable in a lot of ways.
I know that we kind of brought it up yesterday. Like, you know, are the Marlins being so bad a story that's worth talking about? We arrived on no. I just saw somewhere that Jazz Chisholm is the only player on the team with an OPS plus of 100 or better. So like he's the only player that's like league average or better. Tim Anderson, he's hitting 280, but his OPS is 608.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
No,
that's the worst version of Tim Anderson, and that doesn't help anybody. No, the problem with the Marlins, and you know, we don't have to do a whole thing here, but their offense was not particularly good last year, even when they kind of had that, you know, we snuck into the playoffs sort of situation. And as best I can tell, their offense is essentially unfixable. Like there is no reason for short, medium, long-term optimism as it relates to the Miami Marlins lineup offensively. Like it's bad now. It's going to be bad. And the danger, you don't always have a choice, but the danger when you build your team around pitching is that, as we are witnessing very explicitly right now, it is a fragile foundation upon which to build your team. And unfortunately for the Marlins, the great pitchers that they've kept are injured, and the one that they traded away became greater after he left, and you're left with a rotation that simply does not cut it outside of Jesus Luzardo, and an offense that is a total fucking trash fire. And like outs, Arias, fine, good player. Josh Bell, Jake Berger, Jazz Chisholm, Jesus Sanchez, Tim Anderson, Brian De La Cruz, Nick Gordon, Christian Betancourt. Why are we expecting any of those people, outside of some lingering optimism about Jazz Chisholm? Why are we expecting anything from any of those people? We shouldn't be.
No, we shouldn't. I didn't expect them to be this bad, but I definitely didn't expect them to be good.
I'm mad that I didn't come firmer on being down on the Marlins, because their offense was obviously a problem. And we already knew that they didn't have Alcantara. We are like, it just seems like so much was resting on the trio of Yuri Perez, Edward Cabrera, and Braxton Garrett. And I realize that the latter two may return this season, but like, that's just a really dicey way to build a team. And they don't have anybody in the, like some of these teams that have bad offenses, you're like, well, at least I can point to these guys who are coming. The Marlins are, as best I can tell, a total lost cause as it relates to, are we going to be a real meaningful playoff team anytime soon? I can't see how that happens. Maybe they have more bump years like they did last year, but I think we all knew what that Marlins season was and how sustainable it was. And every indication the team, ownership, and front office has given, like since the front office changeover, has been that we are not going to invest seriously in this roster, and we are not going to invest seriously in this team moving forward. So good luck.
All right. That puts a bow on the Thursday episode of Baseball is Dead. Dodgers Padres this weekend. I saw ESPN had a list of the best rivalries in baseball right now. They were third. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, they were definitely red hot for a second. I think it's fizzled out. I would give them 2020 to like 2022. But I don't know how hot that rivalry is right now.
Baseball rivalries team-wise are in a really bad spot, in my opinion. And I assign almost no juice to that rivalry. In my mind, we've reverted back to Giants-Dodgers being a better rivalry. Like the era of Padres, and that's not even like registering for me really either, but like the era of Padres-Dodgers being a thing has come and gone. Like, I guess if I'm pressed on who the best rivalry is in the game right now, Phillies-Braves?
Phillies-Braves is a good one, yeah. But, I mean, we were
Rangers-Stros got some stuff going on.
Yeah, we were there for Phillies Braves, and like there wasn't a ton of juice in the park that night.
No, there was not.
Like I've been to Red Sox Yankees in the heart of the shit, and it wasn't that. It wasn't anything close to that.
No, I just have a hard time and have had a hard time lately getting up for Red Sox Yankees, given that.
Yeah, that shouldn't
it
even
makes
be in
me
the
sound
top
like
10.
an old. It makes me sound like an old bitch, but like. I'm old enough to have remembered when that rivalry was like fucking legit. And
like, I used to say it all the time. Like in around like 03 to 06. Like if you wore,
it was a real thing.
If you wore Red Sox stuff in New York or Yankee stuff in Boston, it was like wearing gang colors in like the wrong territories.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for a return to people getting like assaulted for wearing team colors, but what I am calling for a return for is like maybe like an occasional Don Zimmer gets thrown to the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or, you know, Jason Varitek and A-Rod are putting their hands on each other's faces.
Mm-hmm. But the teams have to be good for that to make you feel something. If that's
like step one.
Yeah.
Yep.
If the Yankees are just fighting with the Red Sox and the Red Sox suck, then who cares?
Yeah. I'm not holding my breath for a return to those sorts of rivalries anytime soon for any pairing of teams. It's a different sport, I think, in a lot of ways. And you need individual igniters, and they need to be the leaders of those teams for those sorts of things to be sustainable now. And that was the case when Red Sox Yankees was, you know, hot shit. Like the people who were front and center in that rivalry were largely the best players on those teams. And, you know, unless somebody on the Braves is going to step up and be, you know, kind of like get a little bit of that fuck you that Bryce Harper's got or something like that, then I just don't understand how we're ever going to get there in 2024. And, you know, whatever. It's not the end of the world, but
yeah.
Giants. Point is that Dodgers Padres, when one team is going to finish 25 games ahead of the other team, it's just not that much of a rivalry, I don't think.
I agree. But we are getting Rangers Astros this weekend as well,
which is a legit rivalry and two similarly talented teams. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So be on the lookout.
Didn't
for
they
that.
just play? Am I making that up?
I believe they did.
Okay.
Yeah. Jake's takes.
R.I.P. OJ.
Yeah. Rest in peace. All right. See you next week. Bye.
Wow.